are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
All right, it's the Storm Tracker podcast. Marcus Benjamin here with Frank Tucker, representing the Crib, South Florida. And we collectively are representing CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. Make sure you follow us on all platforms. And of course, subscribe to the website, CanesCounty.com, for exclusive information. And first off, I kind of want to start with a conversation that's been brewing around as far as with Hurricanes fans, and it's revolving Miami Hurricanes recruiting. And as of late, they've loaded up on what's considered 3-star talents, and I don't see an issue with it myself because there's a lot of 3-star guys that end up being 4 stars or 3-star rated players that end up performing at a high level on the college level. So, are you concerned at all that Miami is loading up with a bunch of 3-star guys as far as recruiting is concerned with this 2024 cycle?
Nah, not really. Because I think outside of the quarterback position, you don't necessarily need blue chip talent at every single position. We've seen times where the University of Miami has had blue chip talent at every single position, and it hasn't led to wins. Coming into last year, the receivers group was loaded with 4-star guys. Michael Reddings, the Frank Gladsons. The running back room was loaded with 4-star guys. Jalen Knight and Thaddeus Franklin. Henry Parrish, right? And it didn't lead to success at those spots. And I think that this staff is trusting their evaluations on certain guys, like a Vincent Shavers, who's a guy who could potentially jump up into that blue chip ranking
Yeah.
area, right? Isaiah Thomas, we saw him quickly make that rise into the 4-star ranks.
Sure.
It's Tommy Kinsler is a perfect example of this staff trusting their evaluations. He was a 3-star offensive tackle that we moved to the offensive guard rankings, and he became a 4-star guy. Had a really good senior year and moved up accordingly. So I think that Juan Minaya could be a 4-star guy. He's got the size, he's got the strength. Just he plays on a team that's really not that good, which hurts them. So I think that's all part of it. We know Vincent Shavers is going to have a big year at Miami Central this year, going to make that Stanquan Clark type jump. We also know that Judd Anderson is a guy that could make that 4-star jump as well, right? He supposedly had a good performance at that Elite 11 regional in Atlanta, I believe it was. He's got the size. He's got the athletic traits. He's a basketball player, so he's a 2-sport kid. If he has a good year where he finally adjusts to that spread offense that he was in for the first time last year, I think that he could make that jump as well. So I think Miami's sitting at 8 commits right now. And I think that 2 of them are 4-star guys. You could probably see 3 to 4 more of those guys be borderline 4-star prospects if things go as planned their senior year.
So which guys do you think will be 4-stars?
Vincent Shavers is one. Judd Anderson is another. Juan Minaya. Obviously, I don't think the kicker is going to be a 4-star guy. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey is right on that edge of 4-star for us. So I think he can make that Chris Johnson type projection. Because remember, we saw Chris Johnson as a low 3-star prospect who was a Rutgers commit at one point before blowing up in track and picking up offers from the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Miamis, the Florida States, the Clemsons, and then becoming a 4-star. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey has a pretty strong offer resume, and I think that it's only going to get better as teams continue to push at the running back position because you're seeing some schools double up at that running back spot. So that means there's some teams that are left out to dry with those high potential guys. And I think Chris Wheatley-Humphrey is going to be one of those guys people go after really hard, especially because of the fact that Miami's probably going to end up taking 2, and they feel like they can poach one of them.
Yeah, the only player that I think I would question is Judd Anderson. And you said that, quarterback is one of those positions that you'd want to get a 4 or 5-star guy, which I agree with. But Judd Anderson, to me, he would have to make a significant jump this season in order to gain another star. I think with quarterbacks, I think it's really more I don't know. I want to say precise as far as the ratings are concerned. It's more about development, and I think you would want to see a player like him develop into a more a better decision maker when it comes to throwing the football. As far as like size and athleticism, he's got all the traits to be a really great player. But he could end up being just like an Emery Williams. I mean, Emery Williams is a or was a 3-star talent that Miami ended up taking, but he looked great in spring. I'm not saying that he's not going to be a great player when it comes to the college level, but I think he's a player that likely to me remains a 3-star unless we see a significant improvement on the field this season.
Yeah, I think he's got the chance to do that though. When you got Zion Raggins at receiver, he's got some players in that offense with him. That's a team that before he got there won 10 games. So the coaching staff in place has the ability to prove that he's a guy that's one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I just think the puzzle pieces are there for everything to be kind of put in place for him to be a 4-star guy. Obviously, they have to be put into the right place for that to happen, but there's potential there, right? So I think a lot of people saw Judd Anderson 3-star, disappointed because we didn't get Air Nolan, which I understand, right? But I do think that this staff saw a lot of things in Judd Anderson that they liked. They've laid up, like they stopped talking to guys like Michael Van Buren for Judd Anderson.
Yeah.
So there's obviously something that they really like there. Otherwise, they made a big mistake because they're missing out on some top 10 guys at the position for Judd Anderson.
Sure. Michael Van Buren ended up committing to Oregon. And, there's some local guys as well that we hope, I guess, don't pan out to be these outstanding guys that, just from a Hurricanes perspective, from a locals perspective, of course, we're rooting for them to be fantastic. But, players like AJ Hairston and Alberto Mendoza, those two guys are quarterbacks that, I think have all the potential in the world. And I hope that
CJ Bailey.
CJ Bailey is another one. Obviously, these guys are local kids, and you would hate to see these guys perform at a really, really high level in college, and Miami missed on. But of course, we're rooting for the best for those guys. All great kids. Another 3-star talent that Miami is trending towards is a player out of one of the pipelines, which Mario Cristobal is an alum of, which is Columbus, and that's Dalen Russell. Dalen Russell put Miami in his top schools list a while back, a couple of months ago, I believe, and now he seems to be trending towards Miami. I think he's a really good player as far as a 3 technique type of player. You don't get that many great ones or even good ones at that position. So I think it's a great target for Miami, and we'll see if he ends up in the class. But what do you think about him and what he potentially could bring for the Miami Hurricanes?
Finally, the Miami Hurricanes trust the evaluations at defensive line and don't miss on a kid because he sawed off a little bit. This Russell kid is the deal, okay? When you talk to Columbus coaches, they say that he's one of the better players in South Florida regardless of position. He had a huge year last year. And you could really look overall, like we know how good TJ Capers is. He had a better year than TJ Capers.
Agreed.
And I think he has Kalijah Cansey type potential, right? He's about 6'1", 265, 270 pounds. He's going to be big enough to play that 3 technique spot with some elite pass rush ability from the inside. And he's got the ability, the athletic traits to jump out to that 4-eye type defensive end spot if needed to as well. So I think he has that positional versatility that this Miami staff likes and what they're getting from Joshua Horton, Ruben Bain, guys like that. And I think he could come in and be a guy that's a rotational piece almost immediately at the University of Miami. He's already in a solid weight training program at Columbus. We know what they do in developing their guys. He's a headstrong kid. You don't have to worry about him being in trouble or anything like that. He comes from a homegrown program that we need to make a pipeline. Obviously, you're missing on TJ Capers right now. To get Russell means that you didn't completely miss on Columbus in this class, because I don't see Dylan Stevenson ending up at the University of Miami. And I think that he is an absolute A-plus take by the University of Miami. And he's another guy that everybody's going to look at the 3-star rankings, say he's, ranked in the top 35 at that strong side defensive end spot. I think that once we move him to the defensive tackle position in our rankings, that he'll probably rise up more than that. And I think that he's a guy that could be a borderline 4-star prospect as well when it's all said and done.
Right. Now I'm not really comparing him to Ruben Bain, but he's got similar traits to Ruben Bain, as he is a player that can play both inside and outside. And he's a talent with tremendous upside. I definitely am 100% on Dalen Russell, and I think he'll be a great addition to this class. We'll wait and see what happens. But more on CanesCounty.com. Visit our message boards, Canes Talk, for more on Dalen Russell. But I did get a chance to go to Chaminade, one of the best high schools in the entire country, right here in our backyard in Hollywood, Florida. And I got to see their practice, and just their talent is definitely one of the best in South Florida. Once again, Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star receiver, wasn't practicing. He was practicing for track, and he ended up, of course, having a good showing in his track meet, the state track meet, in the hurdles. Runs the 110, and also runs the relays as well. And Josiah Trader wasn't practicing as well, nursing a hamstring injury. But Zaquan Patterson was out there. Of course, you can see that interview on CanesCounty.com on how he felt about Miami after the visit. I did also see Chris Ewald, and you can also see an interview story on that on Canes County. They are just pretty much loaded up as usual. It's kind of what we've come to expect from that program. And I really like what they have at running back too. Obviously you already know what you're getting with Bullet, Davion Gauss, the North Carolina commit, but to add Trigg, Lewis, I think is really going to help this offense even more, because you've got more of an elusive type of back who's very shifty, and combine that with Bullet, who's more of a downhill type of runner. It's going to be a very fierce running attack. It is a rebuilt offensive line, I will say. A lot of young guys. I talked to Coach Jones, and he said that the offensive line may end up being the best at Chaminade that he's ever coached, which says a lot, because you lost a lot of guys from last season. You could arguably say that last season's offensive line was the best ever at Chaminade. In fact, I would say that. But he said, a lot of young guys, but he says in the long run it could be the best. So that's saying a lot about that O-line. So Chaminade is going to continue to, of course, be a pipeline for Miami. They unfortunately didn't have their scrimmage yesterday, but Kevin Beard was out there and, recruiting the guys out there in the rain. So I'm really impressed with what he's doing and his efforts to try to flip Jeremiah Smith. My question is, does he do it? Can he flip a Jeremiah Smith, or can he get a Josiah Trader? Can he flip any of those other players, or can Miami flip any other players or get any other players from Chaminade, in the long run. What say you?
Yeah, I think over the next few months, there's going to be things that fall into place, kind of like how we were just saying, things need to fall in place. But the guys who become 4 stars, things need to fall into place for you to lead up to getting Jeremiah Smith. You got to get some more Miami Gardens Ravens kids in that class. You already got a couple in Vincent Shavers and Chance Robinson, which is huge in the first part of building this class. But I think you need a Josiah Trader. I think that you probably need to go grab another 4-star quarterback, a guy that has some weight to him in that quarterback ranking a little bit, just so he's got some trust in who that quarterback is going to be. Because what I'm hearing is the reason he's backing up Ohio State a little bit is there might not be so much fandom with Jeremiah Smith with Aaron Noland as people thought, right? I think the kids have a good relationship, played for South Florida Express for a tournament down here, but I just don't know if he's all bought into that. And I think that's why you're starting to see some traction with Georgia a little bit after the Dylan Raiola commitment. The quarterback tandem is something that we've seen come up time and time again with top receivers. Jerry Jeudy committed to Alabama because he wanted to play with Tua Tagovailoa. So this could be something very similar to that. But I do think Miami is in the race. Things have kind of opened up with his parents on the options that they're considering. They're starting to take more visits. They've already confirmed officials to Florida and Georgia. I think that Miami eventually gets one of those later in the summer or early into the fall. They have that dead period in July. So I would not be surprised to see Miami getting an official visit. That's going to be another step that needs to happen for them to be able to get a commitment. They got to take Ryan Mack. That's going to be a huge part of this. To have the support of a guy like Rod Mack is absolutely huge. And I think to get somebody that is a childhood friend of JJ, along with the guys that we obviously won in this class, the Lil Wayne McCoys, the Josiah Traders, Davion Gouses, you got to add a Ryan Mack to this class just to show that you're serious about recruiting this Miami Gardens Ravens special team, that was. So I think there's a chance. I think if you're landing him, that means that you're going to have a top 5 class, because that means you added 2 5-star kids, and then you probably added Bullitt, who's a top 10 running back in the country. So I think there's a good shot that Miami does it. I know a lot of fans are going to say I'm crazy, and I know that a lot of Ohio State fans are going to say that we're nuts and that he's not going to flip. But college football is fluid, recruiting is fluid, and Jeremiah Smith's recruitment is just that as well.
Yeah. And what's interesting with his recruitment is that he's been kind of vocal about his recruitment, which is, I wouldn't say it's very common, especially for a 5-star guy. You don't really need to be on social media really kind of expressing your feelings about it. But we saw his comment about the fans of Miami, and or let's say he was saying that he wasn't going to visit Miami anymore. But from what I understand, from when I spoke to him, that that is still very much a possibility that he visits Miami because of his relationship with Kevin Beard and offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson. But he also did say something about just having his recruiting process, because he did visit Georgia, as we know, last weekend, and I really think Georgia is a player here. I the way Georgia is recruiting, they're the new Bama, Frank, and like they can get pretty much any kid that they want, and we saw that they got Colin Heinrich. I wasn't really expecting that, at least not at this point of his recruitment. It kind of just jumped off, and for him to just commit to Georgia, and then they brought in another great tight end, which kind of opens up things for, I think, Miami as far as some other tight ends that are available, as far as Kylan Fox and others. But it's just interesting to see his recruitment evolve, even though he is committed to Ohio State. Brian Hartline was at Chaminade last night as well. But I definitely think it's a possibility. But you did mention some stuff about a quarterback, so I want you to kind of expand on that as far as his relationship with Aaron Noland, and really just what that really is about. But if you compare that with Miami, like Judd Anderson, we've talked about him. He's got potential upside, right? But he's not a splash name as far as recruiting is concerned when it comes to the quarterback position. And he's not a guy that, has been playing with him or has ever played with him 7-on-7 or anything like that. So um I question that part. And then I question, okay, so who's next as far as quarterbacks are concerned? Because I'm thinking they're not going to just stick with just Judd Anderson. Like, who else could Miami get at quarterback that would probably entice a Jeremiah Smith to come to Miami?
So what I'm hearing at quarterback is that it's not make or break that they had a second guy because they love the evaluation of Judd Anderson. Now, I do think that Shannon Dawson is exploring some blue chip options. If you follow the follow list, right? There are some guys that he is starting to kind of explore just around the country, right? Like we heard when that Wisconsin's quarterback commit Mabry Matower was a guy that was going to visit, right? And he was a guy that they were talking to and interested in. So I think that quarterback commit would probably come later in the class, and they have potential to poach somebody. It doesn't seem like they're scared at going after other people's guys because it happened to them. It happened with Jaden Rashada, and I don't think that they're worried about grabbing that 4-star guy because we see time and time again that those guys flipped closer to signing day. We just saw Dylan Raiola has already done it, right? He was an Ohio State commit that is now a Georgia commit. So these kids flip flop heavily, especially at the quarterback position. So I think that they will get a 4-star to 5-star guy in this class. It's just a matter of who's it going to be. And I totally get what you're saying in regards to Miami not having a guy who's even Air Noland in the class relationship wise with him. But at the end of the day, I think that Miami's going to make some things happen if Jeremiah Smith wants to be a Miami Hurricane. So that's something to monitor as well, because I'm sure that there are going to be some discussions had if they do get him on campus on who are some guys that you'd be interested in playing with. Obviously, Dylan Raiola was the number one quarterback on the board for everybody, and that included Miami. And Miami was pushing hard to get him in this class. Like, they never got him on campus, but Miami was recruiting Dylan Raiola. He was the number one guy on the board, maybe other than Jeremiah Smith and Kevin Riley, regardless of position. So I think that Miami is still aiming for top guys. I just don't think they want to take a guy. I'm sorry?
But who is more the question?
I think it's hard. I think it's hard to find out who it's going to be because we haven't seen any guys visit, right? And until guys get on campus, you can't really say that there's traction there. The Marcos Davila kid, it went to Purdue, right? They had another kid who was on campus, ended up committing to Oregon, right? Who seemed upset when they took Judd Anderson's commitment. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. He was Michael second quarter. No, the other kid who runs a 10-6 in the 100. I forgot who it is. He's just a 3-star quarterback, not a 4-star guy, but still a guy that ended up committing to Oregon. But yeah, so like there were a couple guys Miami had on campus in regards to visits. Like AJ Harrison's not one of those guys that we would say we love him, right? But he's not one of those guys that is that 4-star guy to flip the mold of the quarterback recruiting spot at Miami right now. So you got to follow the visits. I think we got to see what happens in June, because even at that big recruiting weekend, there was no quarterbacks there. Like they didn't have anybody visiting quarterback wise. It was all skill position guys, really, and defensive tackles and defensive ends. So I'm excited to see what that process is going to look like. I know for a fact that Shannon Dawson is exploring his options at the quarterback position. But like I said, it is not a make or break for this staff to take a second guy, unless there was a specific guy that Jeremiah Smith wanted to play for and it was accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we got a couple of more spring games coming up this week. St. Thomas, Columbus, Booker T, Miami Central. So we'll be out there and getting as much content as we can from those spring games. Follow the Crib South Florida as well as 305 Sports for exclusive content. Of course, subscribe to canescounty.com. Last thing I just kind of want to talk about is baseball, because we got our ACC baseball tournament starting today. One of the last teams to play in the tournament, which is Miami, they're going to play NC State today. And last time, starter Gage Zeal pitched against NC State. He pitched 8 innings. I think only gave up one hit and a run. He was outstanding. It was one of his gems of the year. So I expect him to have another just like that against NC State. Although it's going to be a pretty tough environment, because NC State's basically playing at home in Durham. And then they'll play Duke again, which they ended up winning the series against Duke in a handily game 3 rubber match. So, but it all depends on, really, to me, is pitching. As far as they go, Carson Lagone. I mean, it seems like he won't be able to go. It seems like he may give you a few innings here and there, but it doesn't seem like he's going to give you those solid outings as a starter that he did earlier in the year, as he's dealing with some inflammation in his throwing arm, and he's able to pitch, but his recovery time is just it's a lot. It's a lot for him. So Miami's going to have to rely on this bullpen. It's going to be a cast of pitchers that will have to carry this team, because the hitting's going to be there. The Miami Masters, they've kind of coined that phrase, that the hitting is definitely going to be there with players like Yo-Yo Morales, Blake Sear, CJ Kafis, Zach Levinson, Carlos Perez, and Dominic Matelli. All of those guys have double-digit home runs this season. So I expect that to continue. Hitting is thing that has been considered this team all season, but now it's like they have to kind of compete with South Florida sports right now, right? Because, the Hurricanes basketball team did something they've never done. Nova Southeastern basketball team did something they never did, and winning a championship, going undefeated. The women's basketball team did something they've never done, going to the Elite Eight. And now we have the Panthers and Heat as well. The Panthers have to win the Stanley Cup, because that's something that they have never done. And the Heat,
and the Celtics have to do what has never been done before, and come back from down 3-0 to beat the Miami Heat. That's what's got to be done.
It's not happening. We're going to get a championship for Jimmy Buckets, because he deserves it. And so that's something that hasn't been done. Obviously, the Heat are the flag wavers of Miami sports in this century, with 3 championships, more than the Celtics, of course, since '88. So they have to get one for Jimmy. This is for Jimmy. We have to get one for Jimmy. But I'm really excited for the Panthers as well. But this baseball team, they have to. I know they're thinking about it, because they've talked about it in press conferences. They like the energy, and hopefully they can feed off of that and at least get to a College World Series, because it seems like at this point, if they don't make it to a College World Series, it's going to be a complete and utter disappointment. I think it is a disappointment anyway, every season, just because, they've won 4 championships, and I believe the only other team to win more championships than Miami in college baseball is Texas.
Gabe Vincent out tonight, baby. Gabe Vincent out tonight. I'm loving this. Yes, let's go.
Okay. So that's going to give you a little bit of hope, but that's going to just crush your dreams even more when Miami still wins without, Namdi. That's what we calling them. So, but yeah, we'll see what they do. But the thing with the baseball team, they're kind of like the football team in terms of how the fans view the team, because if they don't make it to like national relevance, it's considered a disappointment. Even with the Hurricanes football team nowadays, as much as they've been somewhat irrelevant for these past few years, Miami fans generally don't consider the season a success unless they're going to a major bowl game and winning. And for the baseball team, it's kind of the same thing. Going to at least the College World Series is kind of the bottom standard. So that's high expectations for a baseball team that has been up and down when it comes to pitching is concerned. But I think a lot of the bullpen pitchers have been coming on as of late. Ronnie Gallo, Alejandro Torres has been giving you some good outings, and Ben Chestnut, although the last game wasn't a good outing for him, he's been pretty solid this season. So those players, and Alejandro Rosario as well, who generally has started that third game, has gotten rocked a lot this season, but I think he's better to come out from the bullpen. We'll see if those guys can carry this team to a College World Series. And I think if they make it, then they'll be considered like one of the teams that are doing great for the South Florida sports in this remarkable 2023 year.
Yep, let's keep it going, South Florida. Other than the Miami Heat, let's keep it going. The Miami Dolphins. We'll skip the football team to do. It's going to be the Dolphins. Okay, so that's where we're going to leave it.
Yeah, I mean, we're a football town, anyways. And I think, this is good stuff that's happening with these other teams. But I think what ultimately really matters is the Miami Hurricanes football team and the Miami Dolphins. But we'll see what happens.
Because you're 100% right. The Heat don't matter. The Heat don't matter. So,
I mean, we've won it. We've done it. We're about to gentlemen sweep the Celtics. So it's like we're thinking about the NBA Finals already. Getting Jimmy the MVP.
Keep thinking about the NBA Finals, please just keep thinking about the NBA Finals. I love it. I love it. I love the smiling on in losses. I like it. I like Jimmy. Right. I like where the Celtics are at right now. We got Jason Tatum finally getting field goals in the fourth quarter. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. It's not happening. I just want to let you know it's done. It's done tonight. But that's gonna wrap it up for the sports. The South Florida Sports Tracker podcast. I might as well rename it. Because we've been so great in 2023, and that's gonna continue tonight, baby. Make sure you follow us on all platforms and subscribe to us on canescounty.com. Use promo code Miami30 for the first 30 days for free.